Good morning. I'm Dr. Patricia Danks, and today I'm going to talk to you about the not so terrible 2's. Today we're going to look at the behaviors of the 18-month to 2-year-old and ways that primary caregivers or the mothering environment can respond to these behaviors. First, I want to review a couple of notes from previous sessions that I think are important to interweave with every session. The first one is that when we talk about the mother, we're talking about the holding environment, which means the parents, the mother and the father. One of those may be more primary, may spend more time at home with the child, and the other one may be working, or maybe they're both working and sharing parenting, but they are both referred to as the mother. And it also will include any other primary caregivers, like maybe grandparents or closest friends, and certainly siblings. Older siblings help a lot with a 2-year-old. One of the other things that I want us to know is that parents are the primary educators. So for the rest of this child's life, they're going to be learning mostly from you, both what you consciously teach them and also what you don't mean to teach them, but they learn from your behavior. The holding environment at this point does not necessarily include daycare, because we're looking at who is primarily responsible for the child in teaching them their values and the behavior that the parents want the child to have. As we begin this session, I also want to point out that we realize that all children do not develop at the same rate. And so when I say at 2 years old or 18 months old, different developmental psychologists have determined these stages to be at different stages and ages. So what I'm going to do is just relate what has worked for me in studying the different theories. This is what I have seen with children. And so these dates are rather, not dates, but these ages are rather fluid. So your child may do this earlier, may do it later, but they are stages that you can determine, and when you see them, you'll know what's happening. So we're going to use the ages, but they're not the most important point. Also, I want to point out that if your child has some delayed development and you're working with a professional, you're working with your doctor or a social worker or someone who's helping you with these stages, those will be primary. So you can fit that in with what I'm saying, and then you can decide with your resources what is best for your child. So these are all ideas and things that I have experienced and learned and want to share with you. But then you have to decide. I shouldn't say have to. You get to decide what's right for your child. I'm not trying to tell you because I don't know your child. Let's wonder, or have you wondered, why the terrible 2's? Why do they call them terrible? Well, I think it's because of how the parents feel sometimes. A 2-year-old is dynamite. I don't know, I think it's like one of the favorite special ages of a child, but then as a mother and grandmother, I will say that every stage I would say, this is my favorite age. The terrible 2's are called terrible because of how difficult sometimes it has been for parents to respond to their behavior. So when we understand it better, I think it will be easier to get through, but also so much more interesting and, in fact, fascinating to see how a 2-year-old, how they move through this stage. It's just wonderful and lots of fun. So the idea that what's really happening is a time that we call rapprochement, but it's a time when the child begins to separate from the mother. So it might mean like when you want to hold them because they're so cute and fun and you're playing with them and they're sitting on dad's lap and all of a sudden they want to get down. And they get down, they crawl down, and then if they're walking, they really feel so independent and they want to move away from the parent. Now, if you notice, they don't usually move far. It's a big deal when they will go into another room where they can't see you, but they don't stay there for long. When they don't see you, they're not really sure you're there. So they have to keep checking back to make sure you're there and that you know where they are. That's very important for them. And so they will go in and out of a room or in and out of your visibility. And to them, that's very, very daring. And to you, it's kind of a fun thing to watch. This is also one of the reasons that they love the games peekaboo and hide and seek. When they're little, like 8, 9, 10 months old, and up to the 18-month-old, probably even earlier than that, maybe even 4 months old, they really love to play peekaboo. And the reason for that is it's kind of like, now you see me, now you don't. And when they put their little hands over their eyes, you disappear. And so there's just a moment of fear, just an instant of fear. And then they are in control. If they take their hands down, they're very excited because you're still there. And so it's a very magical time for them because they're learning that if I can't see you, it doesn't mean you're gone. It means you can still be there. I just can't see you. And if they can do this and control it by themselves, it's a wonderful game for them to play, and they can play it for a very long time. Now, once they're down off your lap or down off the chair or down off the couch, and they want to run around, they begin to think that it's fun to play hide and seek. Generally, the parents introduce this game. So if they're playing with Dad and he goes in the other room and hides behind a door and they come looking for him and he moves out behind the door, they just think it's so funny and they will just crack up. But again, part of the humor comes from that passion of fear that's only instantaneous. But it's like, oh, where is he? And then he's out and there. And then that becomes a very fun game that's actually teaching them something. Now, I want to remind you that children's emotions are not developed yet, and they're still really very much in a sensory place, and they're not controlling their emotions like an older child or an adult would. You want to be very careful not to traumatize a child with these games. Some people think it's funny if they jump out and frighten the child and the child cries. That is not funny, and there's no reason for that. It's no longer a game when the child cries. And what it shows is the adult is bigger and in control. That's not what the child is supposed to be learning. The child is learning that they are in control. They're beginning to have a little bit of control of their own body and themselves in this environment. So playing with them should always be fun. And if you frighten them or if you bully them, it's not funny and it's not healthy for them. So we need to be careful to remember, you're going to play with a 2-year-old, act like a 2-year-old. And you'll know that the most fun parents are the ones who can put themselves in the age of the child and play the game at their level. At the age of 2, your child is very, very curious, wants to know about everything, but at this age doesn't always have the language to ask questions. They're learning language, but they may not always have it yet. So what you want to do is to be aware that they are going to explore everything in the home. They're going to get into things. They don't have reasons, so they can't understand yet why if they sit on the couch backwards they can fall off and get hurt. They don't understand that. So one of the things as a parent you want to teach them is how to get down off the couch. You teach them how to turn around and slide down from their stomach and get their feet on the floor. Teach them how to do that as soon as they're walking. Try to be one step ahead of them and teach them things they're going to need to know. Another thing that they will like to do is they love to climb. And if you have a staircase in your house, I recommend that you teach them very early how to go up and down those stairs. Now, I know that gates are important when you have stairways or other dangerous parts and you want to keep your child away from them. I use gates, and I think most people do. I think they can be very safe. But soon your child is going to learn how to undo that gate, or they're going to learn how to go over the gate. And so you want to be aware that sometimes gates are not the answer. But you can teach a child very easily and very young to go up a stairway. And the way you do it is you get on the stairs with them on your hands and knees, and you show them how to crawl up. And when they get to a level and they're no longer on the stairs, show them how to turn around, sitting down, and come down the stairs on their butt. And they think it's the greatest game. And if you do it with them, they will be following what you do. But it will keep them safe if they get up there instead of them just trying to jump from the top step off. You want to help them, to show them the danger and show them how to master that. And they will do this at a very young age, often 18 months old, or as soon as they're a little bit, after they've been crawling a while, you can teach this. But make sure they've mastered it before you take the gate away. Another thing an 18-month-old to a 2-year-old will do is they like to climb out of their crib. That's a difficult thing because unless the crib is where you are all the time, you may not be there. And so you want to make sure that things around the crib are not things that will hurt them. So make sure there are no toys down there, and they usually don't just jump out of the crib. They usually kind of hang on and kind of slide down the side, but they will try it, and you want to make sure that they're safe. So keep things away from the crib that they can fall and get hurt on. Another thing is children are known to crawl up on their furniture, and this has become a real problem. So one of the things that they do, which is really very clever on their part, it's really good thinking. We don't want to punish them for this, but we also want them to be safe. But children have been known to pull the drawers out and make steps and climb up their dresser or their bureau. And when they do that, it will tip over on them and they can get very badly hurt. So what we want to do, and what many parents do, is bolt that piece of furniture to the wall. It's not going to hurt anything, and some people think, well, this dresser's pretty heavy, I don't think they could turn it over. Just remember, the heavier the piece of furniture, the more likely it will be to hurt the child. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, but always be aware and expect your child to climb. They will climb out of their high chair. They will learn how to undo the safety straps. They will eventually be trying to crawl out of their car seat in the car. So these kinds of things you need to be aware of, because they're just busy little bees, and in an adult mind they do terrible things because they're dangerous. But if you look at it from an educator's point of view, they're really clever little people, and we really want to be careful that we are watching them, or we have an eye on them at all times. This is where baby monitors, I think, really come in handy. Don't give those up when they're no longer an infant. Keep them, I don't know, maybe until they leave home. Probably not that long, but they really can save the day when you have little ones. Your 2-year-old is also separating from the mother, separating emotionally from the mother, and their favorite word is no. They want to be in charge of themselves. They don't want people telling them what to do. But these are not definite feelings or thoughts with them because they go back and forth really quickly. I used to call it with my daughter, I used to say she had a push me, pull you kind of relationship. One hand she was pulling me toward her, and the other hand she was pushing me away. And I think that's a good analogy because they really want you with them, but they want you to leave them alone. So you can see the struggle. And when you want to be with them and you're guarding them and taking care of them, and they want to be alone, they might throw a little tantrum. And so the best way to deal with that at this age is just to put your arms around them and distract them. Take them, pick them up, take them into another room, talk to them about something else, and they will quickly change their mind and be focused on something else. So we want to be careful not to yell at them or scream at them or do anything that's going to be punishing, because it's not going to do any good. It's just going to make them feel bad, and it's not going to make you feel good. So it's not a good way. I think a good example of this is when you're trying to change their diaper. And we're not always in a place where we have the changing table with us. Many parents just put them on the floor and change them at this age because they like to be on the floor, and they will be most safe and most comfortable if they're on the floor. But they still want to get up and walk away instead of allowing you to change their diaper. And it's the same thing when you're trying to dress them. So this can be very frustrating when you're in a hurry and you need to get to work, or you're trying to get them to daycare, or you're trying to get them to bed at night and they don't want to cooperate. Just know that this is a normal behavior and they will get through it, and so will you. Now I want to draw a parallel between this stage and the stage of the 13 to 15-year-old. So many things are similar. Both of them are a stage of separation, separating from the parents. They want independence, but they can't handle independence. They're not thinking clear enough or reasoning well enough to do the things that they might want to do. I just remember my great-grandson when he was 3. He was telling me how he got a cookie at home. And I said, well, how do you do that? And he said, I sneak. I said, you do what? What does that mean? And he says, well, I go and check where mom is, and if she's in the bathroom or if she's in her office, then I go very quietly and I take the lid off the cookie jar and I take a cookie and I go somewhere real quiet and eat it. And I thought, oh, you little sneak. That's just what he said he was. You're going to see the same behavior in a 13 to 15-year-old. When they know there's something they're not supposed to do, they will find a way to do it when you don't know. So they will do things that you're not aware of, and they become very good at it. Just like a 2-year-old, teens, especially these young teens, need constant supervision. It's so important that you know where they are and what they're doing at all times, because they make really bad decisions sometimes. And different than a 2-year-old, they can make a decision that will affect them the rest of their life. So we need to be aware and find ways to have them under supervision. The 13 to 15-year-old has the same desire to explore their world, and they have the same desire to be so curious. And they want that independence, but they don't have the maturity to make good decisions yet. So, and they also are separating from the parents. So sometimes the very last person they're going to ask for help or advice is the parent, or any adult that they consider to be supervisory for them. They turn to their friends. They relate with their friends. Their whole world is their friends. And some of them will eliminate the parents completely. Some of the things that they do is they may take the parents' car for a ride. It's not unheard of, and unfortunately we've heard of fatal accidents that have happened with this, because they want the independence and they want to drive a car, but they have no experience or no education with it. It's just not safe for them. Other things that they will try is smoking and drinking and sex. And we know that they're really not old enough for any of these things. And smoking, we hope they would not even try. Today we see kids as very young vaping, sometimes encouraged by parents. But this goes back to what I had talked about last week about the parents having this responsibility to make sure that children are kept physically healthy and safe. Some of the things that helps us at this age is when our child is involved in school activities, especially after school activities. If they can be involved especially in some kind of sport or band or something that's going to help them to move physically, will be very helpful for them, and it also tends to direct their mind away from things they should not be doing. Many of the things they do that are not good for them, they do because other kids are doing it, they don't have anything to do, they're not being supervised, and they want a little excitement, and they want to be an adult. They think these things are adult behaviors. I know it's very difficult today to supervise teenagers, and we think at a certain point they're old enough to be alone. And physically, I agree. I think they are old enough to be left alone. However, I think we need to make sure that that child has the maturity to be left alone. And many children at the ages from 13 to 15 do not have that maturity. We need to understand and be careful about how they act in other parts of their life before we can leave them alone, or better yet, leave them to mind other children. Even babysitting, you want to be very careful that they're not taking on responsibilities that they do not have the maturity for. When they are home alone, like after school, maybe it would be possible to have a neighbor or a friend or a family member drop in on them. And I found when I was raising my children, if I left them alone, I had a couple of tricks that I would do. And one is I would leave, and then I would go around the block a couple of times, and I would come back saying I forgot something. But it was really important for me to see what did they start doing when I went out the door. I was fortunate in that they were never doing anything they shouldn't be doing, and I'm not sure they knew I was checking on them. When my children were teenagers, I might have had to go to work for an hour or a meeting or something that was important, or take one of the children to an activity and come back. So if I left them alone, I would see if someone would check in on them. But if not, I would call and check and have a conversation with them and talk with different ones just to see what they were doing and make sure they were safe. Just like we had baby monitors when they were little, sometimes I think it's safe and I think it's a good idea if you can have cameras in your home. I always think they're good ideas. And in today's world, I know I have cameras in my home, and it's good for all kinds of things, not to just check on children, but I want to know what's happening with my husband and I when we're gone, when one of us is gone. It's a safety feature for us at our ages, but I think it makes sense when you have teenagers. I also think it's important that we get to know our children's friends, and we get to know our children's friends' parents. If we know that our children are with a friend and maybe at the other friend's home, they're going to be safer than being home by themselves. Sometimes we can feel safer if we know that our child is with another family who shares our values, and that family is watchful and interacting with them. There's much more we can say about teens, but we're going to wait with that until we get to specific topics. Which reminds me, if you have something you would like me to talk about, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to be able to make this more interactive. so that we can share ideas and have a conversation. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you will subscribe and like and share this with others, and be good to each other.